Transformation and disruption, everyone's talking about. It's a common theme of this conference as well. We all hear about Kodak, BlackBerry, Uber and Airbnb as common examples of disruption, people being disrupted and people who are doing the disruption. But looking closer to the field, there's also examples in disruption that could be found closer to home. And a recent stark example would be the earthquakes down in Kaikoura, which is a great illustration of how disruptive change can blindside the best of us at any time. And if you look closer at some things like crises and disasters and the change that they unfurl, there's quite a lot of learnings in how to react to disruptive change and actually, if you look closer at them as well, some agile learnings through those as well, which we'll touch on a bit later. But first, a little bit of scene setting. As Roger pointed out, I work for a company called Rivera, which is a cloud services provider. We were founded in 2005 as an infrastructure as a service company. We were born out of HDS, which is a storage company, which is quite important to remember when we start talking about software. I started in 2010, and my first journey was that of responding to the all-of-government RFP for cloud services to provide infrastructure service to government, which we were successful in, beating out a lot of the big boys in the market to get on that panel. And we were pretty successful in doing that because we were quite small. We were a bit of a startup or an upstart, as I call it, back then. And we knew what our vision was. Our founders had kind of pursued the vision of providing infrastructure on demand. And so we knew what we wanted, and that set us up pretty well to win that bid. Fast forward to today, and we've grown from about $80 million to $100 million company in a short space of time. With 45% plus year-on-year growth over that time as well, which has been pretty successful. Spark brought us a couple of years ago, obviously, for that, and have already recouped their investment on that, which makes them reasonably happy. Now, the dangers of being really successful and growing really fast is that you can, well, what we found when we stepped back was that you can focus on transacting business too much, and so what we found is we stopped innovating as much as we used to, which is what we used to be known for and what got us to where we were. And the other thing we found was that when we did our market research and looked ahead at what was happening in the market around disruption, the likes of Uber and Airbnb, and the advent of the hyperscale cloud providers, was that if we weren't careful and didn't focus on ourselves and continually improving ourselves, then we could be disrupted as well, or overtaken. So a group of us a couple of years ago kind of foresaw that and got together and worked out that we needed to respond a bit to internally to make sure that we didn't get disrupted ourselves. And we came up with two goals which we wanted to focus back onto. One was getting focused back onto innovation within the company, so that we continue to innovate, add value back into our customer base, so that we weren't left behind. And the second one was with the advent of some of the hyperscale cloud providers coming into market, was that we really needed to pivot ourselves from being an infrastructure cloud services provider to a full cloud services provider and embrace them a bit more, adding value over the top. Because the danger is we're in a high growth market, but the more the hyperscale guys landed in Australia, that would turn it more into a commodity market and drive a lot of the margins further downwards. So we realised we needed to do something different in that space. So the first thing we focused on was obviously adding value back into the business and our customer base. And as I said, the biggest challenge was that most of the business was busy transacting good growth, which is all good, and didn't have time to take new products into market, which was a big challenge for us. So what we ended up doing was creating a small dedicated team which was focused on ideation and MVP. And they were removed from everyday business to be able to focus on doing just that and getting some of those ideas to market quickly to validate them. What we did when we'd set that up was we did a bit of research and we looked at lean startup and utilised some principles and how we would operate that team. And the key thing about that was focusing on the value proposition. So every time we come up with an idea or an idea comes in, we evaluate it, and then we draw up what the value proposition is that we're going to take to market. And we usually in canvases quite successful at that. It helps us focus on the customer first and foremost, and understand the problem that needs to be solved in market or that the customer has, and then what value is going to be derived from that, whether it's value for, well, it has to be both, to be honest, value for us as a company and value for the customer as well. That way that you can derive a solution that is going to work for everyone at that point. So we focus on the proposition first and foremost, and then we define and build the technology around that proposition at that point, making sure that everyone understands what the value is we're supposed to be adding back to market, not just building a product or a technology for the sake of things. We experiment quickly, try and test that into market. That sometimes means we bring in specialists into the team to work on that technology set, and quite often means we use third parties to actually validate stuff, and often we do that under a completely different brand to work out whether it's going to work or not, and then we make the decision whether by measuring and learning from the success of that MVP, we either stop because it's not going to add any value, we've worked that out, or we then decide to take it forward and iterate on it. And sometimes that means that bringing it back into the brand, and sometimes that means that we leave it as something different. So the second thing we did was the need to transform, and we realised pretty early on we wanted to pivot from an infrastructure service provider to a cloud services provider. For a multitude of reasons. One of them was that the market was becoming quite consumerised. People wanted to touch and feel everything they bought. They wanted to transact with it online, whether it was via an API or a self-service portal. They wanted to get data and metrics back that added value and they could make decisions off quickly. Conversely, internally, we decided we needed to orchestrate and automate our own infrastructure platforms because we needed to release a lot of our resources back from doing the manual tasks that were currently in the business that we can then put back into innovative projects and focus back on to doing value-added things. To do that, we worked out that we actually had to software define ourselves in order to orchestrate and automate anything, in order to build rich user interfaces that requires a lot of software development. Now, if you think back, we came out of a storage company and engineering focused. We did have 2 software developers in the company, but they were kind of pegged away in a corner and did some billing metric stuff and didn't really add much value into anything. So our first problem was we didn't actually have any software capability in the company despite where we wanted to go. And in fact, the word was pretty much a bogey word in the technical realms where people didn't want to, if you mentioned the word software, you're pretty much knocked on the head, which was a challenge that we had to work out from. So how do we go about it? We obviously extrapolated the vision and strategy a bit more and got the CE on board with it. He understood what needed to happen and understood the requirement to software define. Because we were being successful and growing significantly, he didn't want to disrupt the business too much because the business was good. We were making lots of money. Customers were happy, but we still needed to pivot, he realised. So what we did was we created a new team, which was focused specifically on software development. We dragged the 2 guys out who knew a bit about it, and we supplemented them with a bunch of other guys from the market and a couple other guys from the team as well, who had an interest in orchestrating and automating what we were doing. We gave them a name, which was called the Cloud Automation Team, which linked itself back to the strategy which we had painted, so that it was closely tied to the vision we were going to. And it put them in as a focal point within the organisation as well, so that everyone understood what they were there for and that it was the way forward of how we wanted to go. I'd done a bit of work in the past with projects and Agile, so I realised that was probably the best way to implement for two reasons. One, we needed a software development framework to help us iterate quickly. But secondly, we needed a framework to help build a culture and empower the team as well to work off. And so Agile and Scrum in particular was something that we picked up quickly. We got an assurity actually back at that point and did a bunch of training internally, not only for the team but also for the senior leadership team. So they understood what we were trying to achieve from that team and could drive it back through the business as well. I jumped in as product owner at the start of that journey. Given that I was one of the people that derived the strategy, we saw it as a good way to keep a focus on the vision that we wanted to achieve and help drive the roadmap and then prioritise the requirements within the team on a by-sprint basis, which was quite key given what we did want to do with this team was going to be the focal point of everything we did. We needed a viewpoint from the end to end of the business of what the priorities were and also what the market priorities were so we could make those calls, which made it a bit of fun because they changed pretty much every 2 weeks, to be honest, with the way we were growing. And then what we did was to kick it off, we pretty much picked off a couple of quick wins, which we thought were quick wins, which we could iterate quickly with to prove to ourselves, first and foremost, that we could do this and prove to the business that it was the right way forward. And from that point on, we developed what we call Cloud Creator today, which is effectively our front-end interface to our services, which is an online portal, which links back to everything we do. And today we continually iterate to that product. Taking on board client feedback and requirements. As more stuff we put into it, the more customers use it, the more they want to put into it. And of course, back to the bimodal team we set up around MVP and innovation products. All new products and services have to go through that team and be integrated into that as well. So that's kind of the journey in a quick 2 minutes. It's been a big success for us, but there's been a number of challenges. One of them's been success. We've actually outputted a hell of a lot of good features and functions to our customers and brought a lot of new products into it. But that just means that the backlog grows by the day, and it's actually quite difficult to keep up at this point with it and keep everyone happy. So we're at the point where we're trying to work out how we scale out that practice to be able to iterate a lot quicker and value back into market quicker. Somewhere through the journey, I got moved off into another part of the business, which Roger explained what I do these days. And that meant we lost the product owner and we didn't actually replace me. We kind of replaced it with program management, and whilst that worked to some degree, we lost a little bit of direction in terms of being able to prioritise, understand the end-to-end business, and being able to keep setting that vision roadmap that we'd set before. So one of the key learnings from us was that the product owner is very much a key role, and it's something that needs to be in place early on to make these types of things successful. Being an infrastructure company, we have a few siloed technical teams around. So when we went to automate and orchestrate that part of the business, we lost velocity because often those guys were busy doing stuff. They didn't quite understand what Agile was because we hadn't baked it through the rest of the organisation at that point. It was still focused around that team. So that slowed us down a little bit when we got to those points. So a couple of learnings were that you actually need to, when you implement Agile into the business, you kind of need to bring the whole organisation on the journey to make sure everyone understands it and their place within it. But also the other learning was that we needed to bring in plan for each iteration that we needed and bring in those subject matter experts early and effectively bring them into the team full time for that part that they were involved in, so they could effectively deliver the value that we needed. Early on, we didn't put in continuous integration and automated testing. We didn't, despite talking about it a bit. The guys wanted to do it a bit later on and get some runs on the board. I look back, I think if we'd done that up front, we would have had increased velocity through it, because if you don't implement test-driven development and continuous integration and those good automation tool sets in the development process, then you can lose a lot of velocity as well, and it's actually quite hard to bake that back into the process once you're up and running as well. And back to the bimodal thing, we did it twice, obviously, with those two teams I've talked about. A lot of the time you do good stuff because you get focus on things in the bimodal team, but it can be actually quite hard to bring stuff back into the business, which is actually a requirement quite often. If you MVP a product, for example, and it's successful, quite often you need to link that back into the current business from a service management perspective to make it a seamless experience, bring it back on brand, those types of things. And whilst we're successful going bimodal a bit to deliver the value, we still have the same problem with everyone being busy transacting good business growth. When we needed to bring it back in, they were all a little bit busy to focus on it. So that was another challenge we've had to work through to work out how we seamlessly bring back those types of things into the business. So some learnings that we've got out of the journey that we've been on over the last couple of years, which hopefully add some value to you guys as well, is what I've learned is that digital transformation is actually about continuous improvement. At the end of the day, it's as simplistic as that a lot of the time. You do need to enable continuous improvement in the business, so you need to make sure that you're focusing on improving yourselves, adding additional value back into the market and your customer base. And it's okay to start small and iterate out. A lot of people look at digital transformation and go, it's a big thing, I've got to turn the business upside down and completely transform it. You can actually start small and then build it out and be quite successful. But the key with all of that stuff is you need to focus on the experience and what your customer actually wants and is going to derive value for them. Technology is a key enabler, and that's a big one for us, given we do cloud services as well. So you talk cloud, big data, mobile, all those good things. Definitely a key enabler of digital transformation. But without the right people and the right culture mindset, then it's pretty hard to transform anything. So you really need to focus on those things first and get that up and running to make that happen. When I talk about people, again, that's your internal people, but also your customers. Those are people that you need to take on the journey as well. Culture-wise, you need to find a good balance of your internal culture and use some tool sets to help empower people, and that's what we found using Agile and Lean in some of our process, is that it empowered a lot more people to collaborate and create high-performing teams who do good stuff. Focus on the customer experience. It helps a lot of the tool sets and mechanisms around Lean Canvas, being able to prototype and test things out quickly. And the focus on user experience is also key on making sure that the customer experience and what you develop is core. And Agile and Lean also help you focus on what's important. You look at retrospectives, stand-ups, sprints, and those types of things help you focus back on what's important in small chunks and actually deliver some value quickly that we've found. Personally, I've been on a journey with Agile a couple of times. You've got to remember when you implement it, it's not just about 2-week sprints. I've talked to lots of people who say they're doing Scrum or Agile, and they do 2-week sprints, and that's what they think it is, but they actually derive no value out of that at all. So without the mindset, the culture, and the vision about where you wanted to go, you actually don't derive as much value as you should from it. Implementing Agile is all good, and getting people to come in and train you is all good. But unless you link that back to your organisational DNA and your own internal cultures, it's quite hard it doesn't truly work, and it's quite hard to implement in a wider fashion as well. So if you haven't done Agile and you're thinking about doing it, it's a key thing to understand is your own internal workings and DNA first and how that links back into it. Leadership is obviously an important thing, and Dowie talked from Westpac yesterday about this, quite key. You either need to go top down and influence all the leaders to push that mindset through the business, or you need the leaders to understand what you're doing and step back and effectively become the servant and enable the staff to do better things as well. Product owners are crucial. There's been a couple of talks the last couple of days about that as well. Which you haven't seen, I'd suggest you jump online and look at those presentations. Without them, you do lose a bit of vision, and the prioritisation is actually a big part of being able to do stuff quickly and making the right calls. So you need to have the right product owner involved to be able to do that. As everything, it requires good people. So whether you're empowering internal people to be better, or you're bringing in more high-performing guys to bring the skill levels up, you need to build your teams around good, high-performing staff as well. So circling back to finish off, with 2 minutes left, I talked about the earthquakes and nature's fury and the learnings you can get from disruption. Disruption can blind the best of us at any point, and natural disasters are great at pushing that back into it. So, and put that in business context, most disruption actually comes from outside of traditional parameters. So a lot of people I talk to also quite often focus on their competitors and how they're going to compete with them. But it's actually not your competitors that are the ones that disrupt you. Usually it's someone completely from left field when you least expect it, a bit like a natural disaster. So the key thing is actually to focus on yourself and your customers and what matter and iterate from there. So if you're already reasonably successful in doing good things, then take small steps to iterate yourself to do things better. You look at a disaster and you look at the core of things, Agile iterative process actually delivers. They use it a lot in responding to things. So they send small multi-skilled teams in first to derive what's going on the ground and then coordinate response from there. And then the response itself is broken into small chunks. They focused on In terms of getting people out, they focused on the elderly and sick first, and then prioritised down to the children and families, and then worked their way through that. Similarly, we prioritised opening one road over multiple roads to get access in, and then what they brought in first was a prioritised audit in small manageable chunks that were impactful to the people on the ground at the same time. And you can apply that back into business as well and the process around it. People respond to change as impactful, and if you look at a disaster, it's not a great thing, but you see people actually create a culture and a focus around a disaster quite quickly. They come together to focus on what's really important, given the impact and change that's hit them. And a lot of storytelling comes out of it too, from a social media perspective and also a media perspective, which helps bring focus from outside forces into what's important as well. So it's another good learning to take from that type of thing. And on storytelling, images are quite powerful. We used them quite a lot at the start in terms of painting a picture of the vision and roadmap that we had and wanted to lead along. But we also used images around what we didn't want to turn out like. So it was always a good reminder to the team about where we were heading and what we didn't want to be on that front. If you talk to a lot of mental skills coaches, whether it's business or sport, most of them will tell you that the quickest way to rewire or change a person's mindset or brain is actually through powerful images as well. So it's another useful tool set to use on the journey.